Welcome to the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring intimate conversations with emerging and established musicians, recorded at the Gaslight Studios in St. Louis. And now your host, Aaron Perlett. Welcome back to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast in Season 3. I'm your host, as always, Aaron Perlett. My guest today has been nominated for Grammy Awards. He's had gold and silver selling albums. He's worked with the likes of Lil Wayne, Childish Gambino, Chance the Rapper, J. Cole, Lily Allen. Now he has his own album out, and he is my guest. SX, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, bro. It's good to be here, man.
And I know you were telling me before that you're a little under the weather, so I appreciate you kind of toughing it out and making it, man.
Literally just came off tour on Friday, and then I've had a few shows like after the tour, little separate ones, and I think my body just held on for those shows, and then I've been ill for like the last 2 days. So yeah, man. Tour life.
Something about being on stage though that kind of gives you the energy to push through, huh?
Absolutely, man. I think if you can just rest the whole day as well, and you just go and give it your all on that 1 hour that you're out there, it's like it's not that much. But yeah, if I was this ill now, then I'd be absolutely canceling shows for sure.
So you know, you've had for a relatively young guy, you've had a pretty amazing run thus far, working with, you know, kind of just a list of artists that people would die for. And I know that at the beginning, Lil Wayne was kind of the person you really had in mind that you wanted to work with. But yeah. Where did music start for you? How did you first get into music? Like what inspired you growing up?
I'd say like my mom used to play a lot of like ABBA and Fleetwood Mac and songs like that. So it was kind of around sort of trippy kind of pop music, if you will. And then when I got older, she started to play like dance music and things. And then my older brother around that time too was DJing. So he was playing like Wu-Tang and all different types of hip hop. So naturally just hearing that in the house, I'm going to just take to it, you know. So I knew that I was always interested in music. And in primary school, which is like, I don't know what you guys call it out there, but I was playing like the violin and stuff, so I was always kind of into music. And then when I hit high school, I was really into like rock music. That was like my thing. And yeah, I just started playing the drums. That was just what I took to. I started doing lessons in that. My mom would take me, and you know, she's always has supported me with my music and just pushed me to do something that she could see I'm passionate about, you know. And I think that's the reason why I held that motivation at such a young age, especially being from where I'm from in the UK, Wolverhampton, which is a super small city, man. Like no one's really from here. I think the most successful person from here is Liam Payne from One Direction, who I actually went to college with too. So that's pretty cool. But I feel like just having nothing growing up kind of thing in terms of the ability to, you know, like in London, for example, everybody is there. It's like the hub of entertainment, you know, like you could be walking on the street and just see someone and an opportunity could rise from that. But in Wolverhampton, it's nothing here. So I used to get the train at like the age of 15 and 16 to London, which is like 2 hours. And I'd go on my own, man, and just wait outside Radio 1, BBC Radio 1, and just wait for like DJs, artists that were maybe having interviews. And I'd just wait and give them my beats on a little CD. Back then, there was no USB sticks that were quite expensive. So we had, you know, blank CDs, and just that hustle, I think, is what made me get to where I got to, you know, in the production world, because nobody was moving like that. And I had this theory that, like, if you want to get to where someone is, you just find out where they're at and go. They're going to be right there.
But do you think that there's been a lot of conversation between kind of the analog state of music versus the digital state of music, yeah, and people that are kind of musicians playing music feel like the barrier for entry because of the digitization of music has been lowered. But because you actually come from a musical background, people like you and maybe like Chop Squad DJ, who's a pianist, do you feel like that has better prepared you and made you better at your craft, that you actually can compose and play music?
Absolutely, man. Like there was no internet when I started making music, like literally, you know. I mean, there was, but it was not like how it is now. There was no Spotify. It was just about iTunes. you know. So it's just like even from when I started playing the drums. Sorry to go back, but like I got bored of that, and then I started DJing, just like my brother. And this was on vinyls, you know. There was no CDJs. I still come from that era of vinyl, so even that's just absurd. But that was just as it was kind of switching to CDJs, and by that point, I got bored of that. And then instead of playing other people's songs, I started making beats. And then I got bored of that, and now I'm an artist.
Well, it is remarkable, you know, when you think about where rap came from and where it's come today, because it's so dramatically different. Because to your point, you know, it used to be all about using actually vinyl to, you know, to make that baseline sound, whereas today, you know, it's a very digitized medium for the most part.
I think you can still replicate, like, almost to the T, though, the sound of the analog sound. I mean, there's never going to be nothing like the real thing, of course, but I just feel like today it doesn't even matter. You don't actually need that equipment, as sad as it is, because it does give that crispy sound. But you know, all of my like microphone outboard, I use like a Tube Tech CL1B, and I've got a vintage U87 from the 70s. So it's like I'll still implement that kind of the vintage sound within my music as well. So I think it's kind of just like the times have changed, man.
Yeah.
You don't even have to make a song 3 minutes anymore. That's what's crazy. Like people's spans are just so much shorter that it's like, damn, you know, they don't even want a 3 minute song anymore.
Well, and the rap world in and of itself is such a unique animal in that you have everything from dropping singles, but also the phenomenon that is the mixtape. It's
Yeah.
something that doesn't really exist outside of the rap world. And then you have albums, and there's a differentiation between, and I always equate the mixtape as something more like an EP, whereas the album very similar to a full length album. But there are, you know, certain subsets that are very different from other music genres.
Absolutely, man. I mean, for me, like I have dropped 5 mixtapes since 2017 as an artist, which is why I feel like now it's time to do my debut album. For me, the difference between a mixtape is, for me personally, is like the amount of care that I put into it. Like sometimes I don't fully care about how the mix is, how the quality is. Maybe like I just want to get the emotion out there and let the people feel it because it's raw. You know, I feel like that's the purpose of a mixtape, is to have fun with it and not take it so serious, you know. And then obviously with the album, I'm taking it a lot more. That's not to say I wasn't taking my mixtape serious, but in terms of mixing and the theme and sort of like, I'm just writing whatever. I'm not really overthinking about what I'm writing. I'm just getting my emotions out. I'm trying to portray that. And that's kind of what I did from the first mixtape to the last one, which came out in August last year. I just feel like you can hear how I've evolved as an artist through them, which is why I feel like it's definitely album time, you know? Yeah.
So what was the point? What was your break? What, you know, you said you're kind of like chasing people down. You're just kind of going where the action is, but what was it that kind of got you to the point where, wow, this is like my doorway into big time?
So I made this beat. It was called the Woo Rhythm. It was like a grime instrumental. I made it when I was 15. And then when I was 17, all of those trips where I went to the Radio 1 station and waited, it finally paid off, man, which is crazy. Is one of the DJs who's not on the station anymore, but he played the song on the radio. And back then it was kind of like, if your song got played on the radio, it was like, it's going to get a lot of listeners, because there was no Spotify, there was no playlists. It was what was on the radio, you know? And literally the next day it got played again, and then it just kept getting played. And then it became that every single sort of rapper in the UK did a freestyle to this beat, like legit. And it became its own kind of like thing to do a freestyle on this beat. So the biggest and the smallest, everyone was doing it. And today it's one of the biggest grime songs of all time, like definitely. So, but that opened up the door, because I wasn't just making these like grime beats. I was making these like colossal hip hop beats, you know, with like synths and pads and emotion. Bear in mind, I made that beat when I was 15. So when I'm 17, I've evolved and I'm hungrier. So all these doors were opening for artists to be like, send me more beats. And they keep using them. They keep using my new beats. They keep putting them out on their mixtapes. And then some of them were signing major record deals at that kind of time too. So that was allowing me to sort of produce on their albums where you'd actually make money. You know, you'd get a little advance for your beat. And at the age of 18, to be getting like, you know, £2,500 for a beat, I'm like, whoa! Like, I've never had money before. So yeah, man, just definitely blew through all of that money and just lived the young man's dream, as you do. And yeah, man, just that's it. Like, I feel like always artists have kind of came to me. I've never sort of forced it, aside from those first days when I was kind of going there to you know, give people my beats. But at that point, it was like I was the guy in UK music production. So all of the artists would just literally come to me. Same with Childish Gambino. He followed me on Twitter one day. I followed him back. Back then, he was just Donald Glover, like the actor, you know, with Community. Yeah. He was just about to drop his debut album, Camp. And I actually met up with him in 2012 at his first ever show in London. There was about 50 people there, man. And just that was insane to be with him from the beginning. And we built a cool relationship. And that led me obviously to go out to LA and work on Because the Internet album, which got me a Grammy nomination. And that opens up more doors as well. It's just crazy. It's a mad blessing. But what I would say is it's very taxing on energy. And, you know, when you start so young, like production, I was literally around 16, 17, and I was in the game and at a big level. It was so like taxing on my energy, and I didn't know that. You know, I just didn't know. So by the time I was about 22, I couldn't make beats anymore. It was like really affecting my mental health. And even that was at a time where mental health wasn't as big as it is now. So I actually just took a hiatus and stopped making beats, literally, and just, I'd still make beats here and there, but it was very like, that hunger that I'd had gone, because I just felt so drained, you know. I was in certain scenarios that were just, I realized that it's the music business, not a hobby anymore. And it's like that, because I was so naive and just giving to people, because I want to win. I want us all to win. It would result in me losing, even though I'm winning at the same time.
Yeah. So did you find that to a degree your joy was being kind of sapped by the business end, and how cutthroat the music industry can be? Absolutely, man. And just sort of how quickly people will like forget about you if you're not constantly providing, you know, for them. And that just made me realize, like, you could be the most talented, but if you're not portraying yourself out there as a hardworking producer or whatever, then people just won't. They just don't come to you, you know. And it makes sense. Like, now I'm an artist, I understand so much about artists and the pressure that they have on them, because it's all good like sending beats to artists, but what about if they're not in the space to be wanting to record or write, or they've got the pressure from their labels and their management? And, you know, it's a music business, man. You've got to make it work. You've got to make it balance out, which is literally why I started singing my artistry career, because I just wanted to do what, can I swear on here? So for people that don't quite understand the rap space, talk about how, as a producer, when you're developing beats, how that works with then the artists you work with, and how those things intermingle, if you could. I mean, essentially, you're creating the backbone of the songs. Ultimately, you know, you pull up to a session with 10, 15 beats that you know are going to be bangers, and in the hope that you'll play at least the first three and one of them will get picked, because you always play your best three first, you know. If they ain't messing with the first three, it's like, yeah. But I think just kind of providing that energy in the studio and kind of giving an artist no pressure. Yeah. But you're essentially providing the music composition that's gonna be the backbone behind the narrative that the rapper is gonna tell. Correct? It's gonna trigger an emotion for them that's gonna pull out some words, you know. Which is why I've always tried to make my beats quite spacey and emotional and open, because I feel like that instantly taps in on the storytelling side, you know. And I know as rappers, that's what they want to do, is tell a story, tell their story. And that was always my kind of logic, was just like, give them emotion, because that's what they need. Yeah. So, you know, you talked about when you turned 22, it sounds like you were burnt out. You were burnt out and a little disillusioned with the industry. But you know, in 2015, you were, I mean, you were at a really great place in your career, and you had finally done work with you know, you'd worked with Lil Wayne,
Yeah.
and you kind of stepped back and you're like, this is all I ever wanted to do, and I gotta, I need to take a break. And I mean, you actually took a break. You decided took a job working in a warehouse
Well, the way
in
it happened, sorry to cut you off, but
yeah,
like the
yeah.
way it happened, it's like surreal. So when I was 22, I started to feel my own mental health being affected by what I was doing, but I still kind of made beats in between it, but I wasn't completely stopped.
Yeah.
And then during that time is when I got the Lil Wayne tracks. Um, and then I flew out to, I think it was Amsterdam, and Cash Money almost pretty much started managing me. But it was that situation that, I don't want to go into it, of course, but like it was that kind of situation that was very like, wow. It's kind of crazy because I went through this at 22, then the Wayne placement came, but now it's like I'm not even fulfilled. I'm just not happy. I feel like it's because I'm always someone that just wants to try something new. Like when I went from drums to DJing to producing, now artistry. I definitely want to get into fashion design and acting as well. That's where I want to shift to next, you know?
And but that was also, wasn't it, there was a family component to that as well, wasn't
Oh,
it? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I have two kids. So when I was 20, I had my first daughter, and that was such a young age to have a kid, which is what I mean by like at 22, I have a 2-year-old. The pressure is on as a parent, as a dad, as a, you know, I've got to make money, and it's like it was just a really tough time, and me figuring out who I am and things amongst all of that. It was definitely a lot for me to go through.
you're probably making pretty decent money at that point because you had had some success. But I mean, you're basically you're still a kid at 20 years old. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a lot you haven't experienced, and you've got a 2-year-old. And but I mean, that was one of the drivers, wasn't it? You needed to spend more time with you know, your this family you were creating, right?
Ultimately, in honesty, like I just wasn't making enough money. So
Yeah.
2016, I had to get a regular job at Wolverhampton Wanderers, or Wolves Football Club, which is crazy because again, another full circle moment is I'm now an ambassador for them and
Mm-hmm.
work closely with them. But it was really a humbling experience to go and get a normal job, knowing I have a Grammy nomination and gold records and #1 album in America on the Billboard. But just because you have that doesn't mean that you're making enough money, you know, like, so yeah, I have no pride or ego to do that. I'd do it now if I had to, because family for me is #1, you know? But yeah, man, I had to get a normal job, and my relationship with my kid's mum also started to decline at that time because I wasn't happy. You know, I didn't want to be working a normal job as much as I love Wolves and working there. It's different when you're working there rather than, you know, working with them rather. Um, but yeah, man, then literally I kind of quit that job after 10 months. And then 2 months later, I broke up with my kid's mom. And I think about 2 months after that, I put out my first track as an artist. I was just like, forget it. That breakup is what led me to be like, you know what? Life is not real. Like, how can I break up with my kid's mom? And yeah, it was just a weird space. So I just started to put the emotion out on my emotional beats. And yeah, it really took off, man.
So did that experience, even though it was probably pretty traumatic for you emotionally, it sounds like it had a huge impact on you creatively in terms of it kind of gave you a springboard to really write things that were maybe simmering inside.
Absolutely, man. And I never wrote songs before. I mean, I had with other artists, but that's just inputting certain lines off cadences that maybe they've wrote, and it's kind of easy to just hear a word when it's already kind of written. But starting from scratch and writing melodies and filling in the words and writing a whole song, and then putting the first song I've ever recorded out, you know, was a risk, but I just wanted to do it. I believed in myself. I wanted to just get my emotion out. When I know I want to do something, I'm going to do it, you know? And I think it is that energy that makes me do it, you know? Like the same energy I had as a 16, 17-year-old, believing in my beats, believing in my ability to, so much so that I'm just like, yo, listen to my beats. Like, you know, and it paid off, man. So I've always kind of believed in myself. I know that if I'm feeling something and I'm energetic about it, my energy is unmatched. Like I'll always thrive, you know. And that's what happened with that.
It's interesting what you were talking about, just about the financial status of your life, because when you're in your late teens, you're experiencing quite a bit of success already, but I don't think people recognize that today, the way the economics are with artists, that it's really hard to make money that sustains a living. And I think there's this perception that a lot of artists are making a ton of dough, and it's just not that simple anymore.
It's not the case, man. Like, and I'm always quite open about my situations. Like, I signed a record deal, my first record deal in the lockdown of 2020, April 2020, and I've learned so much about working with labels that I wish I just stayed independent, because being able to drop when you want, just put out your music and connect with your fans that you're building up. But then when you have a record deal, they want to drop songs like 6 to 8 weeks in advance. They need it to get it on playlisting. But then when my music drops, it doesn't really get playlisted. So I'm still in this kind of like annoyed space where it's like I'm not fully content with where I'm at, at all. But it's just one of those things. It's coming though. I just have to keep going, And I think that's a message for everyone, is like, even when you feel like it's not working out, even when it might look like it is to everyone else, and when they're congratulating you and you feel like almost awkward because you're not at the pinnacle you want to be at, just keep going, man. Because that's all you can do, is just keep on going,
We're talking to producer and artist SX. You are in the process of releasing your debut album. I was surprised to see that that you're taking inspiration from one of the artists I saw was Phil Collins.
Absolutely, man.
And I listened to some of the tracks off it, and it's a very poppy record. I mean, and I say that in a good way. I mean, it's definitely got, you can feel the backbone of rap in there, but it's a pop album too, and it's a great dance record, and it's just got a great groove to it, right?
Thank you, man. I think that's exactly the nail on the head. Like, it's got a mixture of everything. I've not tried to. So with my last mixtape, A Repeat Wouldn't Go Amiss, was me bridging the gap to show people how my album is going to kind of pan out. So, there is pop records on there. Something that I'd never done, especially coming from the rap world. I always was kind of like, pop. But I always have enjoyed pop music and listened to it as a fan. So I've been making pop music, and a lot of the songs on my album are, I mean, you can never describe a song what actually is a pop song, but the element of like it not being a heavy beat with like, tragic lyrics, let's say, it's definitely a pop album, but there is also that backbone of grit there and real raw emotion. And that is who SX is as an artist. It's, SX means Sam. So it's just an outlet of what I'm going through at that time, and very relationship based, just like Phil Collins, he's a huge inspiration to me. And especially him sort of being a drummer as well and a producer in his own respect, just that he's a huge inspiration to me, definitely. Same with Pharrell and Kanye. They were both producers first and then branched out into their artist career and fashion design. So I see myself kind of heading in that direction for sure.
Yeah, and I still think of Pharrell largely as more of a producer than a performance artist, because he's still, if you look at the bulk of his art, it's been more so behind the scenes than it has been out in front.
Absolutely, man. Especially sort of like at the beginning when it was the Neptunes and they were producing like Britney, but I feel like that is what led Pharrell to be like, you know what, like, I am the guy with the beats. Why not? Why not? Like, why not become an artist? And just the sort of energy he had when he was first starting Ice Cream and Billionaire Boys Club, and dropping that with the rap music. Like in the fronting video of Jay-Z, he's wearing like the first ever Billionaire Boys Club t-shirt. That's just crazy. Like, we're witnessing history happening without even realizing it, because you have to realize it's history by living. But yeah, huge inspiration, and Kanye as well, man. Absolutely. Yeah.
When you think about how far rap has come, um, I was really struck by the Super Bowl, the recent Super Bowl halftime, and to me, it was in the top three Super Bowl halftime performances I've ever seen. I thought it was just remarkable. Arguably one of the greatest producer of all time, arguably the greatest rapper of all time.
Yeah, man.
And but it to me it said a lot about kind of where hip hop has come from being, in the late 70s when it first started, kind of a curiosity, to 80s starting to get, build through MTV, to growth in the 90s and 2000s, to now being purely, I mean, it's as mainstream as country music, rock music, or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, rap is pop music now, like even other artists that kind of make rap music and turn it pop, like who could I use as an example? Now I've dug myself in a hole. Maybe even like Lil Nas X, for example. He has pop songs, but they're trap beats, So I think that's the beautiful thing about music where we're at now is people have led the way, the Dr. Dre's, the Eminems, for the new artists to come through, and music is changing. Like I feel like rap today isn't always about the lyrics, it's more about the emotion and the vibe and what do you capture from that? Whereas before with the Eminems, it was all of it. It was the lyrics, the attention to the detail, and the simplicity of the production. The mixes were crazy. Whereas now it's like I feel like maybe we've all just gotten lazy, because that is probably what it is.
Well, I mean, but to your point, if you think about, so for people who don't really pay that much attention to the rap space, take an artist like Drake.
Yeah.
Drake's had a ton of hits. The hits have been like the hits that have been pop hits have been more poppy oriented music, but there's a whole other side to Drake that the people who really follow the rap community know. Whereas he is a great rapper as well, and not just pop artist.
I think Drake's one of the greatest artists of our generation. Just how he has, I mean, when he first came out, people were like clowning him for being the singing rapper. But if you look at now, 10 years later, everybody is sing rapping. He changed the hip hop sound. I think Drake changed the hip hop sound forever. Yeah, he did. He did. I feel like every song kind of sounds like a Drake song in a sense.
I think he's definitely, the melodies have really, to a degree, I think the melodies in rap have gotten far too consistent. And I think a lot of it is mimicking kind of the Drake sound now.
Really, man. I'm guilty of that as well. Like, I genuinely look at Drake as a huge inspiration and always banging his music. So, but I've stopped playing other artists' music because I feel like as a producer, I subconsciously make music similar to that, like the beats I've been listening to. And, so I always kind of just listen to a project and then don't listen to it again.
Yeah. I would suggest that we all do that in every facet of life.
True.
We see someone dressing a certain way. We might maintain our own style, but we kind of mimic it. You're right. You write a country song, you're still thinking about country music that was made 20 years ago. So to me, it's what is it? Flattery. It's a form of flattery.
Yeah.
Another guy that I don't think gets enough credit.
Drake actually has a lyric that says, "Imitation isn't flattery; it's just annoying me."
I'm a big fan of Gucci Mane's, and I find his life to be fascinating as well, and kind of where he is at now in terms of really focusing on helping young artists kind of grow. But earlier when you were talking to me about the mixtapes and the relevancy, my mind went to Gucci Mane because there was a period of time where he was in and out of jail so much, but even when he was in jail, he was dropping mixtapes from being in jail because he needed to maintain that relevancy. Plus, he had those creative juices going. But he's had such a big influence on that Atlanta rap scene that, ironically, you mentioned Childish Gambino. Donald Glover's show Atlanta speaks to a lot. But guys like Migos, and there's so many other rappers that have come up with Gucci Mane. The Atlanta rap scene has really just absolutely blown up.
Absolutely, man. Like And I think that kind of dirty South trap sound before it was, you know, sort of when it was like UGK and 3 6 Mafia, even though they're kind of Memphis and it's all kind of down south, but the dirty South sound, you know, Southern hip hop is what I was growing up listening to and hanging. So Gucci Mane, Shorty Low, OJ the Juice Man, all them kind of people that was working with Gucci around that kind of time, 2006, 7. That was the same times that I was making those beats and handing them out to the DJs and, you know, artists. So Gucci has had a huge influence on me and even like producers like Zaytoven. He was producing for them back then and is still relevant today because of that legacy that they've, you know, it's almost like a homage thing. You have to still work with the guys that paved the way and started the sound, you know. I'm always looking at things from a producer perspective because I'm a fan of producers first.
One thing that I am always curious about, you see this periodically in other genres of music, but you see it more in rap than anywhere else, and that is the necessity to put your name into your own song. It drives me insane with DJ Khaled because whenever he introduces something, he's got to. Yeah. What is that? Where that seems like a very unique rap thing.
I feel like for Khaled, like because he's sort of curating the songs rather than creating them, you know, he obviously will get involved in the production, but he'll tell this producer to make this type of beat. He'll get this writer to do the hook, get this artist to then do the hook. He really curates hits, and I think that is his way of being like, yo, it's DJ Khaled.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting his own brand on.
But I think that's what I was just about to say is like, it's about branding. It's, you know, every time you hear another one, it's like it wouldn't sound right if he didn't do that now. I feel like, you know, you're almost expecting it when you hear every single song on the Khaled album, by the way, says another one.
Yeah. Well, and even if you look at a guy like on the rock side of things, like Kid Rock, who really came out of the Detroit rap scene, and his original style was kind of that rock rap mix. He used to do that all the time. Now he's doing it less and less with every record, it seems like, but it seems to have come from his Detroit rap roots.
Maybe it is because even Gucci is like Scoochie, you know, like every time in it. So maybe it is just kind of like letting the listener know, like, yo, it's me.
Yeah, yeah.
and great branding because, you know, you're almost looking for that to happen when you hear a Gucci song or a Khaled song.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go back to your music because I know, you know, you've got the album coming out. It's got to be really exciting for you and just kind of one of those pinnacle moments in your career. Talk about what it means to, you know, finally have you've had your name on albums before as a producer, but to have the album be yours, how does that change the entire experience for you?
It's a good question, man. I feel like it's different to the mixtapes because, like I said, with the mixtapes, I was just putting whatever on there. Wasn't really focusing on, you know, how great the songs were. Although I know that the songs are good, but with the album, I'm really taking the care on the production side of things, the writing, even with the pop songs. Like, for me to write pop songs is new to me as well because I feel like I've mostly wrote about my relationship kind of struggles or just real life relatable scenarios for the listener. But in pop songs, I try not to go too heavy on the emotional stuff. So it's kind of like a feel good, but also with emotion there. So I think with the album, it's kind of stressful making because I am so self-critical now as well. Like, I'm changing lyrics constantly. I wouldn't say I'm overthinking. I'm just kind of like nitpicking and being super careful with how I'm articulating it, man. But there's a rap side to it and there's a pop side to it. And there's like a kind of, not EDM, but like sort of songs like Who We Are that I put out last year. Those kind of like 4 to the floor type beats, but just the wave, like, you know, the kind of synth wave that's in there. There's definitely, I've been saying to my fans, like, it's like the classic SX where I'm writing about emotional struggles with life and, you know, but then again, there is the pop side. So the next single as well, I'm not actually allowed to speak about it, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited because it's kind of, it's a very different sound for me. And I feel like even All Night with Trippy Red, the last song I dropped, was also a new sound for me, you know?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention that that Trippy Red was featured in the most recent single you've dropped. Are there other people featured on the record that you're particularly thrilled about, you're excited about, that you can talk about?
I know the fans have been waiting for a song with me and KSI. Obviously, he's one of my good friends, someone who I've been heavily involved with his career as of late. And we've got a song together, so people will be happy for that. It's the first time I've said that as well. So we definitely have a song together on my album. Trippy Red's on there, of course. There's a few other sort of features I'm locking in at the moment, but I've had to have the songs ready first. I don't just want to send the demo and be like, oh, you'll get it, right? Like, you understand it. So I'm really trying to make sure that even the way I'm kind of trying to approach the artist, even though they're my friends, I'm trying to get them in the zone and in the spot beforehand so that they can really understand how, you know, crazy this music is. Because I truly feel like that's what it is. It's just, there's no music like that right now, what's going to be on my album. I know every artist probably says that, my album's no skips, you know, you just listen. No, but I feel like, genuinely, man, like, if you skip a song on my album, it's because it's just not for you, that song. But in terms of, you have to respect the art in there, the craft and the lyrics and the production. You know, it's undeniable music. And I don't even speak about myself like that, but I think that's how sort of proud and passionate I am of the album. So yeah, but also super stressed about it, super worried. The pressure's on. I'm ill right now, so I'm supposed to be recording. Life is real, man. And my schedule's busy with like other things, so I really need to find the time to be finishing the album, because it's time now. I need to finish it this month, and I will. But it's just, there is that side as well, you know. Yeah.
Life is real. All right. Well, SX, it has been a thrill having you on the Loadout. Appreciate you making time for us, especially when you're feeling a little bit down. And wish
I'm dying to blow my nose right now.
wish you luck, man. When do you think we'll see the full album done and dropped?
Well, I mean, I'm touring in June, and I can confirm it will be out before then. So, yeah, maybe
right
May.
On.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much.
Essex, thank you so much for being on the Loadout. We really appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me, man. Thank you, bro.
Hey, folks, if you made it this far, and judging by our numbers, you haven't, thanks for listening to the Loadout Music Podcast. You can always find us at loadoutmusic.com and wherever you like to get your podcasts, like iTunes or SoundCloud. And of course, as always, thanks to Gaslight Studios for hosting us. Have a good one.